Hello, beloveds, and welcome back to another episode of Why Is That? The closing week of the election has been crazy. Why is that? We've got FBI investigations, promises on a final huge Wikileaks revelation, and satanic occultism. The craziest things you talk about in this election. We are joined today by Brendan Malone from Left Foot Media. Say hi.
Hi, Simon. Good to be here, mate. You can tell I'm asleep on the job, eh? Terrible.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
So,
It sure has.
Well, only a couple of days left, is it? It's kind of odd because New Zealand and time zones, but by Wednesday,
we've got 2 days really to go, I think, or 1.5 days from our perspective.
Yes, it's all on, and it's getting murky.
It's hard to say where it's going to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have this theory that basically I don't think the polls are going to give... I mean, I could be wrong, but I have this nagging doubt about the reliability of the polls in this particular election. And I don't mean any conspiracy theory. I don't think they're rigged. I just think that that there's just too many moving parts in this election. So if you'd said to me 2 years ago that Donald Trump is going to run in the Republican primary, he's going to win the primary, he's then going to face off against the Democratic candidate, and he is going to come within a hair's breadth of actually winning the U.S. election and becoming president, I would have said, you're dreaming. Right? That's never going to happen in a million years. But here we are. And that's exactly what has happened. And that suggests to me that this is not your normal state of affairs. And I just don't know if the polls are going to pick it as accurately. I have a funny feeling that there's just a lot more going on beneath the surface that the polls can't accurately read in such a bizarre and strange sort of elections sort of situation as this.
Well, they have been talking about the polls have been weighted first towards oversampling Democrats and then oversampling women who favour Hillary. And, then everyone was raving about a poll which showed Hillary up 12 points. And then the next week it had her only leading by 1.
Well, that's the thing. From what I understand, so the polls that were claiming that Hillary Clinton, or some of the percentage points they were claiming that Hillary Clinton was winning by, just made absolutely no sense. Like, effectively, it would make Obama's election in 2008, when he was just this popular, huge, that was a true sort of popularist election, and it would make his election results, his polling winning margins look like some sort of kindergarten experiment. Basically, it would look embarrassing compared to what some polls a couple of weeks ago were claiming Hillary was going to win by, which clearly is not going to be the case. She's not a well-liked candidate. Even people who are voting for her are now openly saying that they are doing it, they're holding their noses as they cast their ballot. And there's huge support for Trump. And if she does win it, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be in a landslide, that's for sure.
Yes, and it's Trump's, neck and neck, and this is with the media against him, mostly, the Democratic establishment throwing everything they have with them, at him, and most of the Republicans, want nothing to, well, not most of them, half of them. Yes, and still, he's still standing, he's still in it. That's amazing.
Well, that says to me that there's, and I've been saying this for a while now, I don't think a lot of people realise there is a massive cultural shift that is starting to happen. And I think regardless of whether or not Trump wins or Clinton wins on Tuesday in America, Wednesday, our time here in New Zealand, I think there's a very large cat that has come out of the bag and that will not be going back in the bag now. And I don't think there's any going back. I think things have changed quite dramatically, and you sort of get a sense that people feel that they finally have a chance to use their democratic voting power to actually to upend what has clearly become a very dysfunctional sort of system that exists in America. And I suspect that if the right candidate who comes along, the next candidate who comes along, who is effectively spouting a similar message to Donald Trump, but has less character flaws, I think they will win in an absolute landslide. I suspect it's clearly people want change. There just seems no doubt about that.
Well, they're even talking about the early voting polls. They're asking who you're voting for. And they're saying for like some black and Hispanic voters, they're saying, "Oh, I'm voting for Hillary," even though they're voting for Trump, just because, So I think I agree with you. It's the polls aren't going to accurately reflect the result, I think, and a whole lot of first-time voters who never get, There's
the first-time voters. There's the fact that there are going to be people who are going to claim, I think, in polls that they're not voting for Trump, and even though they probably are going to vote. I suspect the whole question about independence, people talking about voting for an independent or a third party as a way to try and stop Trump, but I think realistically it's more likely that Hillary voters are going to do that sort of thing. I don't suspect that too many people are going to take a vote off Trump and give it to a third party.
And I think the libertarians have shot themselves in the foot. I think they've destroyed their credibility.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look at, there's all these, it's such an interesting thing this year that, I mean, this is one thing where I think Trump really could be a game changer if he had a Trump presidency. If he introduces those particular, that pledge he made a couple of weeks ago, of what he's promising to do when he gets in office, and things like introducing term limits and removing lobbying and things like this. I suspect if stuff like that actually happens, then what will happen is you will get, I think, a fairer representation in the American system, and there will be real potential going forward for America to have third-party candidates who actually are successful. There's really no chance at the moment of that happening, I don't think, ever. But if some of those Trump promises actually get enacted, then in actual fact that could really change the sort of the shape of how American politics actually happens going forward.
And I think if he does get in, he'll go after shoring up, basically converting the black and Latinos to the Republican cause.
Yeah.
Aggressively. But
I don't know. It's interesting. I have this theory that it's effectively going to be, and I'm okay with this. If he gets elected, I suspect that it's probably going to be President Mike Pence, really, and Donald Trump will effectively be a sort of figurehead. And I'm okay with that because I think Mike Pence actually has the leadership capabilities and the qualities to actually do a good job.
I agree. Now let's get into the scandalous stuff. The FBI...
no shortage of that.
I mean, the whole FBI investigations, I mean, when it was it back in August? It's like Comey said, nope, we're not pursuing charges, and now there was 5 investigations. One of those has been closed today, but 4 are still going on, especially into the Clinton Foundation. And that's done her a lot of damage this close to the election.
Look, and I think the whole thing has been so bizarre. It's interesting to see some Democratic Hillary supporters who are touting today's announcement that they're not pursuing the email line of inquiry any further. Some of them have been touting that as proof or something that she's as clean as a whistle, which is kind of interesting because just 5 or 6 days ago they were all telling us how Comey was a Republican plant, he couldn't be trusted, he was rigging an election and he was corrupt. And now they're telling us the exact opposite, right, when he announces what they want him to announce. The interesting thing, though, is if you go back to, this effectively takes us back to square one, which was the end result of that original investigation. And anyone who is honest knows that investigation, the final outcome of that, was just so dubious and so problematic that today's announcement doesn't resolve anything for Hillary. You end up with an investigation where they come back and they say, you were not going to pursue this any further, but this definitely was, criminal conduct, effectively. I mean, that's not a good outcome. That's not clearing a person's name. It's effectively saying, yeah, there's guilt here, but, what are we going to do about it?
Well,
that's not a good outcome.
Well, a big thing is justice not only needs to be done, but needs to seem to be done. There are so many unresolved. Somebody pointed out the FBI had 8 days to review 100,000 emails, and there are 100,000 seconds in 8 days.
Yeah, that's right.
That is totally impossible to go through.
Well, even apparently, as I understand it, of that 650,000, there were 33,000 new that were non-duplicate emails. And that original investigation, I believe, was about 30,000 emails, if I remember correctly, and it took a full year to carry out that investigation. So now, we're sort of, what, as I understand it, what we're being asked to accept is that in 8 days, 33,000 emails have been properly investigated. It just... I don't know. Look, I mean, maybe I'm a simpleton, and I'm even accounting for the fact that you're going to have multiple agents working on this. Surely you have to have such a complex level of cross-checking and verifying emails that even if you've got multiple agents working on this, it's not simply a matter of reading that many emails. It's a matter of fact-checking and cross-checking and everything else. So, I mean, unless they were 33,000 yoga emails, then, I'm sort of, I don't know. I mean, I can't help but sense that Comey is under, yet again, intense pressure, and he just felt he had to wrap this thing up quickly and get it out of the way. I don't know. I mean, you don't want to cast aspersions on someone's character, but we've seen behind the curtain now, particularly thanks to WikiLeaks. There's no going back now. We've seen behind the curtain. We've seen what's going on. And so it's sort of hard to accept these sort of announcements now. Like maybe 5 years ago, we would have sort of said, oh, well, that's the way it is. But now I think a lot more people are very dubious about what's really going on and how much it's political connections that are driving some of these decisions.
And I've looked a lot into these WikiLeaks, the Podesta ones. I did a show on it. Although there's been, 31 releases of emails. None of them, even though the veracity of a lot of them have been questioned by the Democrats, people's heads have rolled based on this information, which shows. But one of the things I found was quite interesting is there's a lot of these emails are weird. And a whole lot of people think there is, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this, whatever, but they're speaking code in a lot of these emails. They're talking about pizzas, they're talking about walnuts, they're talking about hot dogs, and the most bizarre. It's clearly code for something. A lot of people think it's like a pedophile ring or something. Who knows? But in their private correspondence, they're talking in this weird code. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's hard to see. This is the thing with email. Look, this is where I think you're absolutely right. Justice needs to be seen to be done, and the same is true for the media. For me, one of the biggest failings and the biggest problem of all of the problems in this election has been the abject failure of the mainstream media in America to actually act like the media. They have effectively become a propaganda wing of the Clinton campaign. They have, even if it wasn't intentional, they've decided at some point or other that Trump was the next Hitler, and so it was their job to basically to save America from Trump, rather than to actually be journalists and provide proper balanced coverage and investigation in particular. And the problem is that when you don't have proper journalism taking place, there's just all the speculation goes on. And to be fair, if there were journalists doing their job, then I think a lot of these issues would either be clarified or there would be a lot more resignations going on at a political level in America. Because the latest one I saw, literally just before we've come on air here, is that there's emails showing correspondence between the Democratic National Convention and CNN, and they were writing, or they were giving tips to CNN journalists on what sort of questions they should be asking Donald Trump in an interview. I mean, that's very, very serious stuff. I would argue it's a very serious breach of the Fourth Estate and what is effectively supposed to be an independent bastion of accountability.
Well,
and that is some of the minor stuff, you know.
One of them wrote to John Podesta, who's Hillary's campaign manager, and said, "I'm a hack for doing this. Here's the article beforehand. Let me know if there's anything you want me to change."
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's just he's even admitting he's a hack.
Yeah.
You know, it's
And that's a serious problem. That's where, thank goodness for the internet, and despite the fact that when you've got the internet, citizen journalists and the sort of long-form stuff like this show and anyone else who does this sort of stuff on the internet, you're going to have a lot more speculation, you're going to have a lot more guesswork, you're going to have, you know, even conspiracy theories creeping in and all the rest of it. But the problem is someone's got to ask the questions. When the gatekeepers are no longer tending the gate, you know, who keeps them accountable? And at this moments like this, you're thankful for the internet, which actually allows at least some form of challenge to that status quo. Because just imagine what would be going on. I mean, if no one knew, you know, imagine how false, if you like, the pretense would be, how unaware, how deluded the majority of the electorate would be. At the moment, there's a small group, I think, or smaller group, who are willing to turn a blind eye to support their candidates. But I think, by and large, now a lot more people are a lot more aware of at least what the implications and suggestions and even rumours are. And I do think that actually matters.
I think my big fear in this election, if Hillary wins, and you know the Democratic establishments, you know, who almost lost, you know, will be horrified and seek to make sure nothing like that can ever happen again. Yeah,
it's quite conceivable. I think, though, my gut instinct is that even, regardless, as I said, of who wins, the cat's out of the bag, and that might have a bearing on how much they can get away with. I mean, remember, they had their own Bernie Sanders, who, you know, we know now so much was rigged against him, but he effectively almost stole that race off what was supposed to be a safe establishment candidate in Hillary Clinton. And so I don't know if they would be able to get away with it, but you're right that I could conceivably see them trying to really sew things up in their favour. However, I think my gut instinct is that Hillary Clinton will be, if she wins the election, she will be one of the worst presidents they've had in a long, long time. And I say that not out of some malicious, I don't like Hillary, but based on what we know even about her record in politics already. She's not a sterling example. She doesn't offer anything new. She is the establishment par excellence. She's a war hawk. She is the status quo sort of personified, and she has not been a particularly good politician, if you like, in her time in office. You know, she's been dogged by all sorts of scandals and issues and things that you would not call sterling successes. So what happens is when you get to the level of being president, that stuff just amplifies itself. And I would suspect that this will not be an 8-year presidency, or, you know, a 2-term presidency. I think it will be a 1-term presidency. Probably the same, to be fair, if Trump wins, unless some major improvement happens.
Yeah, we were talking before the show about the polarization of not just American society. It's happening here in New Zealand and Australia, all basically through the West, but probably more in the States because, you know, election time. But, you know, some people just, Trump has hit the, oh my God, you know, evil. And other people just look at Hillary and like, how corrupt can one person be? And all these people who support her just don't care. What does that say about them?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I was having a discussion with someone the other day, and I sort of said to them, look, because, you know, you and I are both Catholics, and look, as a practicing Catholic, you look at this, and And it can be very easy to say, where's the virtue, in all of this? Where's the good old days where even though you might have disagreed strongly, and you might have even played a few underhanded tricks to try and win an election, there was genuinely sort of an undercurrent of basic virtue, and there was almost like a robber's code, of things you didn't do and say, and it seems that that's all gone. But I think the reality is, should we really be surprised by this? We are now living in a post-Christian West. And I'm surprised by the number. What surprises me more is not this kind of behaviour is happening and that this sort of stuff goes on, but that you've actually got people who still believe that, particularly Christians, I think, who still believe that our candidates almost should be acting like virtuous saints. And you know what I mean? Like, my first thought is, and my first question is always, well, where would you get that idea from? We're now living in a post-Christian era. Why do you think our candidates would still cling firmly to those sort of basic Christian virtues in the way they conduct themselves,
I saw something from some sort of evangelical leader around the, was it Project Hollywood tape, and saying, I've asked the publication to remove my previous things about Trump, I'm now calling on him to step down because of it, etc. Yep. Just like, this is just a Puritan move, Everyone knows Trump was this huge playboy, all of a sudden, he's expected to be the shining example of morality. He hasn't been a Christian well, he identifies as one, but, hasn't probably been deemed the best, and he would probably admit that. But, it's a whole lot of people are behind the times. Rather they're in the establishment and they're freaking out, why is this, or some people are living, just maybe churches the whole life and they don't know what the, world outside is like.
Well, I kind of think in some ways, and I don't mean this in a, he is like this, but I think in some ways he's kind of like a Charlemagne type figure who's this guy who's really he's got some very nasty behaviour associated with him, old Charlemagne, but he also does some quite important things for the empire, you know what I mean? And I think he's probably any number of examples you could choose to compare him to. And I think in some ways Trump is kind of like that. He's this very flawed, morally problematic character. But I think we are deluding ourselves if we think that we are ever, particularly in America, ever again going to discover a morally perfect candidate. We're also deluding ourselves if we think that Hillary is a paragon of virtue compared to Trump. That simply isn't true. I mean, at worst, or at best, I guess, it depends how you're reading it, you could say that they both cancel each other out in that regard. And I also sort of wonder, how could someone initially support Trump, like you say, and then withdraw the support? It makes me wonder, well, why were you supporting him? Did you genuinely believe that he was this moral, saintly character? Because to me that seems kind of a little bit troubling. That maybe they weren't really looking properly. And it also raises the question, well, where does policy come into all of this? We don't just want candidates because of policy and we excuse everything else. But in an election like this where you have got basically two morally very flawed candidates there, you really have to start looking at the hard nuts and bolts of policy and making decisions about which of them you think offers the most productive way forward for the common good of your country. And it just seems that that's still not the question that these people were asking,
Yeah, and I mean, if anyone's listened to the show, I'm a big Trump fan. Some people said to me, how could you be? He's an idiot, etc. I mean, he was a presenter and producer on one of the top TV shows of all time. He's got a number of best-selling books, went from almost bankrupt to a multi-billionaire. The guy can succeed, and I think he's quite genuine.
Well, I don't. To me, too, there's a couple of things here when I hear people making those claims. The first thing is that I want to suggest to them that maybe there's no doubting he said some dumb things. But I think there's also Trump's image has been coloured, most certainly, by a very, very dysfunctional media process, which has effectively decided that they've got to do everything to undermine and ridicule and try and destroy his chances of taking office. And so that colours a lot of people's perceptions. And I think the other thing, too, is you can point to plenty of leaders who, in their leadership, and even in America this is true, who achieved important things for the country and still managed to be what you would call relatively good presidents, despite the fact they had very serious moral failings. I mean, JFK is a classic example. He is the Democrat poster boy, and he's still held up by a lot of people really as the sort of, at least in the back of their mind, as sort of what they think perhaps, the perfect poster boy president might look like. And yet his moral failings were just, his infidelities were rife. I've read autobiography content from one of his mistresses claiming that she was coerced into an abortion after getting pregnant with one of his babies. I mean, this is, if you're going to make these sort of claims, you've actually got to go back and look and be fair, I think, and look at how I guess what politics is and what it's not. And it's not the election of, or the canonization of a saint. It's not the election of a cleric. But at the same time, you don't want to then use that as a justification for saying, well, anything goes just because it's not, about saints and sinners. At the same time, that doesn't mean you want to give justification for any sort of behaviour either. So it's a very tricky process in that regard.
Well, it is quite odd. If you look at, just Bill Clinton, the Democrats take him out like he's this elder statesman. Besides, the scandals that almost saw him, get impeached, he got disbarred from being a lawyer, anything that would be deemed, if a Republican did it, fatal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where WikiLeaks has been so intriguing, because it has absolutely revealed any number, and there's so many of them now, you just lose count now, any number of issues that if a Republican candidate had done them, oh boy, the media, it would have been media fodder for, a normal news cycle is sort of 6 to 8 hours now. It would have been media fodder for 2 weeks, and this stuff is just being ignored. And that's another interesting point for me, which suggests that, which raises questions about the polls, because with all of this failure to give balanced coverage, the fact that Donald Trump is where he is now, within just a hair's breadth of actually reaching that final goal, it sort of suggests that, that there is something more going on beneath the surface. There are a lot of people, and I'm not the first to say this, perhaps this is one of those change elections where people are genuinely looking, and they're desperately looking for change, not just a change of leader, but an actual change of system and the way things are done.
Well, they talk about in elections like this, the polls the voting always favours the change candidate. Because this has been 8 years of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And and Hillary is just the establishment on steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like, as you were saying about WikiLeaks, they asked Julian Assange, do you have anything on Trump? And Assange, who's a bit of a leftist, he said, yes, but nothing as bad as what he says publicly. Okay, we're just rounding off the terrestrial show. We're going the web extended, where we'll talk about the Satanist stuff. But Brendan, where can people find you?
You can find me at Watch LFM. That's Watch LFM, LFM for Left Foot Media, so watchlfm.com.
And you can find this on YouTube, Why Is That Radio Show, for the web extended, which we are in now.
Awesome.
So, yes, feel free to swear your head off. No. Spirit cooking. Oh, my goodness. I kind of would have liked, we're no longer on the radio, so we're not enlightening anybody. I think if I was talking about this to a New Zealand audience, they'd just be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. Look, I posted a meme, a very funny meme that I found on doing the rounds on the internet yesterday, I think it was, and I think the top of the meme says something like, reading the emails of Hillary Clinton staff can't be that bad, and at the bottom it says, and they're Satanists. and it's the most astounding and bizarre, and you wouldn't read about this. You know what I mean? Like, it is just the most, I don't know, like, this is the stuff of, not conspiracy theories, I don't know, this is the stuff of fictional Hollywood movies and conspiracy books, fiction works. But they're actually doing it. They're actually doing it.
If anyone is unaware what spirit cooking is, in the Podesta emails, both Podesta brothers got invited to a spirit cooking dinner by, was it Marina Ivanovic, who
that's right.
is this decades-long famous for being a masochist and inflicting pain on herself, on others. And look it up. I suggest you go to Stefan Molyneux, War Black Pigeon Speaks, for spirit cooking, and it involves a mixture of blood, semen, urine, breast milk, and writing stuff on the walls.
It's satanic occultism, basically. There is no other way. This is not the Satanic Panic speaking. This really is satanic occultism.
And for, when you're talking about Satanism, it's generally to people out there, it doesn't have to be the opposite of Christian belief. It is deeply antisocial behavior. And I'm not too surprised this is coming from the left, because with the progressives who, they hate society as it is. This is why they've got this plan to progress to, which is not going to tell you what that is. They're just going to do it bit by bit, because if I had the whole plan, no one would want to go there.
Did you see the photo of? There's a photo I saw just today of, because Jay-Z performed his special little concert for Queen Hillary, and yesterday it was our time, and apparently a whole lot of people left once he'd finished performing and didn't hang around for the speech, but she gave a speech afterwards, which I think is just hilarious in and of itself, because Trump is absolutely right. If you want to get your head around Jay-Z and why this is so hilariously hypocritical, go and read lyrics to, I think he's got a song, I think it's called Pimpin' or Big Pimpin'. Go and read the lyrics to that song, and you tell me that is that what Trump said on that bus is worse than what he's saying in that song. So that's the first thing that's hilarious about that. But secondly, there's a photograph that's been doing the rounds today of Mrs. I don't know, she's a Ms. Spirit cooking herself, and she's in this weird embrace with Jay-Z, and she's got her two hands holding like his sort of his shoulders, so I guess maybe just down a bit from his shoulders, his arms either side, and she's touching foreheads with him. And it's this weird, if you're a New Zealander and you know what a hongi is, the Māori greeting nose to nose, it kind of looks like one of those, but it's not. It's forehead to forehead. And there she is in full colour. So clearly she's not some weird outsider. She's got enough, I guess, she's got enough contacts to be right there up front, giving Jay-Z this forehead spirit meld or whatever it is. I don't know what they're doing, but it's,
I'm sure she was just thanking him for the sperm donation.
Oh, it's just, my gosh! But when you look, honestly, it's just, you've got to laugh, because basically it's pretty vile, really, and it's all about, like you say, it's about if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, don't think this is some sort of over-spiritualization. This effectively is about, at the heart of that sort of satanic ritual, is the concept of effectively self-worship and self-glorification, and
it's a narcissist
deifying
cult.
Your own power, really,
the narcissists.
Yeah, exactly. It's the ultimate form of power control, to try and take some sort of spiritual self-control. And it's not surprising, because that is sort of their view of politics as well, that they will remake the world in some new, brave, new image, and that the state the government will be the highest authority in the land, and it will be the great arbiter of some new promised utopia. So it's hardly surprising that they find themselves, I think anyway, embroiled in that kind of spirituality.
And funnily enough, they'll be running the government.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, isn't it,
There was a picture of John Podesta, and he was, like we were talking before about, how they were talking about in code in the emails. He sent out a picture of him, and he had, on one hand, he had both his palms up. On one hand, there was a fish, and the other one was the number 14. And, nobody can look at that and know what the hell it is. But on his, in the whole spirit cooking thing, one of the things that was written on the wall is, cut your middle index finger and drink the pain. And now he's got that plaster over there. And on his other hand, he's got all this scar tissue that's long. It looks from cuts. So if a lot of people why... Because rich elites have got into this sort of stuff from the beginning of time, rather the Roman mystery cults to modern day Scientologists.
Well, Eleanor Roosevelt and apparently even Clinton. There's well known, and this is before we even had the internet. Throwing around conspiracy theories and wild conjecture. There were well-connected Clinton people talking about the fact that there were spiritualist seance-type events where Clinton believed she was, conversing with, I think, Eleanor Roosevelt and other famous leaders, and they were telling her how important she was, and,
I was listening to Bill Clinton's speech, and he was talking about this to some group.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And to be fair, too, they're from the South. And I don't want to disparage anyone from the South, but there is part of the Southern thing is there is also that strong sort of that pagan occultism that does circulate around that whole area as well, and often it's in a very bizarre kind of way is married up. You'll find what I guess you'd term cultural Christians who are also married up with spiritualism and other stuff as well.
Even I remember reading about a famous voodoo queen in Louisiana, and she encouraged her followers to go to Catholic Mass because, some spiritual, because they draw a little bit from everything from the Bible, from African tribal religions, and you'll find a lot of wealthy and elite people get in these things because, the secretive, and it's not just the protection the secretism gives them, it gives it more of an elite feel.
Yeah.
And not only are they the elite, they're the enlightened ones that know better than everyone else. And when you look at the rituals and, like John Podesta with cuts in hands, whatever, sadomasochism, there's a physical thing about adrenaline being released and, you get tired in the rituals, etc. A lot of these have sex involved in them because people get off on sex. And, it's what... If you're like a jaded elite... it's a whole nother it's a whole nother world. Some of them live for this stuff. They function in the real world, but they're when they're dreaming of what they'd rather be doing at that moment.
Well, it's kind of funny too. It's not really surprising to find that. I mean, I think it was G.K. Chesterton, or certainly he's credited with saying it. When man stops believing in God, he doesn't believe nothing, he'll believe anything. And the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum. The same is true when it comes to your own personal interior life and spirituality. People do try and fill that vacuum with other things. And for a lot of people, that just because they might have said, well, I no longer believe in, the Christian God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm not into Judaism, or I'm not a Muslim, it doesn't mean that they necessarily believe nothing. And it's to me, at just that basic level, it's not surprising that human need for spirituality will drive people into all sorts of very weird. And the interesting thing is that they've gone for this really irrational paganism. Now, if you're an atheist who's listening, you might be thinking, well, hold on, isn't Christianity irrational as well? Well, no. If for me, in the Catholic context, in fact, we have a whole entire encyclical that was written by Pope John Paul called Fides et Ratio, Faith and Reason. And it's always been the Christian approach that faith and reason go together. And even though there is a certain act of faith required to believe, that act of faith is built on reason and is built on, the natural order of things around us. But paganism completely inverts all of that and flips us on its head. And reason becomes irrelevant. And in some ways, it's not surprising that they find themselves embroiled in paganism, because a lot of what progressive politics is about is really also about betraying reason too. When you think about what a lot of the policy ideas and a lot of the beliefs, the ideological commitments they have, they just don't stack up to good reasoned scrutiny.
Well, tying it back to election and this all in, I mean, a lot of this election is coming down to how people interpret reality. The progressives aren't big realists. They believe they can reshape the world. They believe language, big followers of Foucault, if we eliminate certain words, we eliminate certain behaviors and beliefs, and, they think they can mold the world to their own image.
Yeah.
We're more on the Republican side with the traditionalism, what works, it works for, very certain reasons.
Well, I think it's also, to be fair, a lot of this, one thing I've realised in this election is how many people, even friends of mine, and they're good people, they're not lunatics, they're very intelligent people, and they are good people. How many of them have been very much, I guess, fallen susceptible to they're not progressives, but they've fallen susceptible to that particular progressive idea that effectively the government, the state, can produce some sort of harmony in the world, and look, I used to think that way, but I simply don't believe that now, and I think it's a very dangerous idea. I think what the state can do is it can safeguard and it can maintain a basic sort of equilibrium, if you like, when it's doing its job properly. And effectively, that means really, I think for the state to be doing its job properly, it effectively is not trying to do too much. It's not overreaching. But that's different from this belief that people seem to have that we're moving towards something better, a better world, and that's how history is working and has worked, and that the government really is about building and maintaining and creating peace and harmony for everyone. But really that's simply never, and in fact it's very dangerous, very, very dangerous to invest in our politicians that sort of belief and that sort of power and authority. And even in, as I said, friends of mine who are centrist or centre-right or even right, it's amazing how some of them have become susceptible to that in lots of subtle ways, that sort of thinking around politics. And for me, this election has sort of shown that a little bit, Because
what they call it, the momentum of history.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything will just sort of stay the same, but, we'll tweak it a little bit so it'll be better.
Yeah.
This whole thing of, what's the government going to do about it? What's the community going to do about it?
Yeah.
Why do we run to government for everything?
Yeah. Well, most importantly, what the heck is... what's the family going to do about it? Because if the family is dysfunctional, if the family is not held up as the primary model, if it's no longer valued, it's no longer nurtured and protected, then it's hard to maintain the common good. It's hard to maintain peace. It's hard to maintain even personal stability for your individual citizens whose own personal lives slip into one form of chaos or another, whether the dysfunction in their family is mild or major, and I think the thing is that the irony here is a lot of people talking about Adolf Hitler and comparing him to Trump, but really when you look at what underpins the German evil, that Nazi evil, is really these ideas that the state could be all-powerful, that you could make a better and brighter world for everyone, and that, some people would just have to pay the price in the process. And that same thinking really is back. And it's not in the form of Nazism, and hopefully we don't see that again. But there's no doubt that same sort of very dangerous thinking is back.
And people don't realize, we have to say Nazi, because if we say National Socialist, that besmirches the good name of socialism. Where, obviously there's a huge racist component in National Socialism, but, I mean, it's socialism at the end of the day, whether it's Bernie Sanders' democratic socialism, which doesn't work, he didn't point to Venezuela, look how great it is, and they went full-in socialist. They point to Denmark, where Denmark has said, the Prime Minister, no, we're not socialists at all.
No.
They
slammed Michael Moore, didn't they, for his little documentary, apparently, about claiming that education policies or something were responsible for this success, and they said, well, no, it's actually much more complex than that. We pay our teachers. Teaching is a harder profession to get into over there than being a doctor is. More people drop out of teaching degrees than they do out of the medical profession, which tells you why they're experiencing the success they're experiencing,
Yeah. And this is also one of my fears if Hillary gets in. Because, we've been focusing on the election, and I've kind of been taking a break from reviewing all the social justice warrior stuff. But if she gets in, that's going to happen on steroids, because she's going to be fully behind it, and they're going to seek to turn the education system more into indoctrination, especially at universities.
You're right, and I think she's made no secret. That's the thing that astounds me, is these people trying to... I think the people I have probably a lot of respect for are the people who have said, I can't vote, and my good conscience tells me I can't vote for either Trump or Hillary. And they've consistently maintained that position. And I respect that. I don't necessarily agree, but I respect it, right? The thing for me, I guess the people I find most troubling and problematic are those people they're on both sides, but it seems to me, I don't know, maybe I'm only seeing things one way, but there seems to be a lot more of them on the Clinton side who are effectively sort of saying that she is not just, in their mind, the safer choice, but she's actually some sort of virtuous and, well-meaning and moral candidate who's going to actually bring about peace and harmony. And there's just no doubt, looking at the way she is openly talking about effectively at least half, possibly more, of the American people now, her basket of deplorables comment, her comment about how they're vile people and they're effectively in need of re-education. That's really, that is troubling. The one thing I'd say, though, is I think that effectively that she's probably got a fight on her hands in that regard, in the sense that I think too much has changed now to be able to try and steamroll like she might have been able to do if she'd been elected, say, I don't know, 8 years ago.
Well, it depends. I mean, going back to the whole momentum of history thing, a lot of people just see this as a normal election, where I'm hoping wrong, but, if Hillary does get in, I think she's going to bring in more migrants from the third world. Will try to legalize tens of millions of Mexican illegal immigrants, and that would be basically one party democratic system moving over to the left forever for the foreseeable future.
It depends whether or not, though, because as I understand it, to do that she would have to have the complicity of the Senate with her, right? The House would have to be passing those sort of legislation, right?
Well,
as I understand,
it's one of these things. Is there anything she wouldn't do? She just, morally, and if you're a complete egomaniac, you lose touch of reality, especially when you've got so much power. So, who knows what dirty tricks will be played?
Well, here's what I wonder about. There's no doubt when you look at that Clinton Foundation and the absolutely scandalous conduct that's been going on there. Look, that that there is something amiss when the New York Times has written articles highlighting, very lengthy investigative articles highlighting all of the dodgy dealings. Like the Grey Lady, the bastion of left-wing journalism, which still has some integrity, thank goodness, and they're writing articles saying, yep, there's a problem here. You know there's a real problem here. And there's just no denying that fact. And so part of me just can't help but wonder how much the American presidency, if she wins, will effectively just become the ultimate pay-to-play type, blimmin' corrupt and very scandalous setup. And if that happens, it's almost like she won't have time for any of that dodgy. I suspect with Clinton, it's more about self-interest rather than ideological interest, which is different from, say, Sanders, where his commitment was to the ideology. I suspect her commitment is really to what's best for me and my feathering my own nest.
Of course, and to more positive things. If Trump wins... Now, I think it's a bit different. I think if he wins, it's more a 4-year reprieve and a chance to turn away from the abyss. If he gets in, he's going to basically try to drain the swamp. Wherever the investigations lead, not just into Hillary, but a whole lot of other stuff. It's just wherever it goes. And I think that has the potential to inspire people. I mean, a lot of people might be shocked and horrified at what's discovered. Yeah. But, it's like the same. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they know, Hillary knew they were funding ISIS, and she's also taking money from them.
Yeah, that's right.
I did one of my earlier shows was talking with an Iraqi priest who was... after the invasion, what the hardship people, Iraqi Christians went through, the torture he went through, at the hands of Islamic militants, all this pain and suffering. She's had a direct hand in, and I forget where I was going with this.
What happens if Trump wins? Well, here's my... there's a big what if there. And I really think, like I said on the main show, I think for him to be successful, he really does need to let Mike Pence take the lead. Now, from what I've read and I understand about Donald Trump, that's effectively how he does run a lot of his business enterprise. He hires smart people, which is the hallmark of a smart leader, to be fair. So if that happens, then there's heaps of potential there. The one thing I would say, though, is I'm under no illusions. I'm not one of these people who believes that Donald Trump is the promised Messiah. I don't believe he's a saint by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't believe he is this perfect political operator that is all of a sudden going to be able to, solve all of America's problems. I think instead, what you've got with Trump, I think reprieve, like you said, is quite a good word. And to me, I use the example of, imagine it's like we're under some sort of national emergency. There's been a flood and a tsunami and an earthquake and basically, there's like famine type conditions and there's we're under martial law and we're under an emergency situation. And someone brings a sick patient into a hospital, except what we've got as a hospital in there is effectively a field tent, just out in the middle of a field, and the patient is clearly unwell, and the patient is brought to none other than Dr. Donald Trump. Now, because we're under an emergency situation, Dr. Donald Trump is not actually a doctor. He's done some first aid, he knows a few things about human biology, but he's not a trained surgeon, he's not a trained doctor or a physician, but he can see what the other doctors are not willing to admit, who do have all the training, that the patient is very sick. Now, he sees the problem, he knows something's got to be done. He may not necessarily have the right answers because he's not trained for that, but he knows there's a problem, and you've got to start somewhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've actually got to start with that very flawed, this is how any sort of change happens. Often a lot of the people who are responsible for important change are actually quite flawed characters. Not always, but it is a very common trait. Martin Luther King, absolutely huge and influential in the civil rights movement, and a real mover and shaker, to be fair, in a lot of those important areas around race relations in America. But also very flawed personal character. His marital infidelities he's famous for them now. They're well known. They're out of the closet. But it's I guess, I don't know. I think I heard one evangelical commentator, I think, referring to Trump as God's chaos candidate. and I thought that was probably, I don't know what he meant by that, but to me it sort of seemed like a perfect description. He's this guy who throws the cat amongst the pigeons, and at this stage that's really what you actually need to have happen, because unless the cats are amongst the pigeons, no one is actually going to even try to come up with a solution.
No, and I think another good analogy, I think it was from Stephen Molyneux. He's talking about, Trump's a general. Sure, he might have flawed character in some areas, but he's going to win. He's going to look after people. His men. He's and not just win by any mean underhanded tactic. Because he does care how they perceive him. I mean, he's taken so many slings and arrows in this campaign. He knows this. And when people say he's got thin skin, what are you talking about? But he wants to have a legacy. But he builds stuff. He has a reason. Unlike Obama, who stuffed things up, and he wants a legacy. He wants people to think well of him, and that a lot of people are predicting he's going to be terrible. Of course, they're on the left, but it's like, I think that he will prove them wrong. I think there'll be a bit of begrudging. But if you're hard left, there's just no convincing.
No, well, to me, it's kind of like he's not the same type of character. But it is a kind of, in some ways, it's a bit comparable to New Zealand here, where a lot of people were saying, John Key, he's come from the business sector, and not just the business sector, but finance, which is a very hated sector. And, what does he know about governance? How can he run an effective government? And he has been a pretty effective caretaker-type Prime Minister. He has steered the country very ably, but effectively on paper, before he got into that and took prime ministerial office, he wasn't really. He was from the business sector,
Oh, but in the American context, I mean, he's actually what the American founders were envisioning. A civilian politician, not this professional class.
That's right. And I think that's the thing too. There's such a corruption now of there's such a confusion around the different arms of government and leadership there in America that were supposed to be kept separate deliberately to try and avoid, that they understood, the line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man. They knew that. And they deliberately tried to set the system up so that you wouldn't have any one person or group that actually had total control, or the ability to take total control. And what's sort of alarming now is the way in which that seems to be eroding, and that, to me, that's quite troubling. And I think what Trump's, even the simple thing like introducing term limits for politicians over there, that I think that's a simple way of starting to take back some of those problematic areas and issues that have arisen, in successive decades and since the establishment of the American experiment.
Because I remember listening to Sargon of Akkad, it must have been a year and a half ago, and he was talking with an American guest, and he's saying about how he could see the end of the American Republic.
Yeah.
Because it needs maintenance. The American Constitution has been run roughshod over on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
And, just the power bases that are built up and the ambition and, it's... that could also be a possibility. We hope, American listeners, we wish you all the best. But one day you might be screwed.
Well, it's the thing is too, this is where media comes into it a lot. I think one thing that's really highlighted now is the failings of the media now, because the media has become so entrenched effectively as part of the political process. And remember, it wasn't always that way. And they've now become so entrenched in the way technology is so fast. When they get it wrong, you know, it goes spectacularly wrong. I've even been watching how there's almost, from what I see, there's almost a reimagining, a retelling of history now about Obama's presidency, and he hasn't even left office yet. And that people are already, I've seen people sharing, particularly on social media, you know, memes and other things saying, you know, I'm really going to miss this president, no scandals. and, you know, and I thought to myself, you're joking, right? Are you that illiterate and ignorant of basic facts that you can't remember the Fast and the Furious scandal, the Benghazi scandal, the IRS scandal, you know, the bankers taking bailout money and using it for bonuses scandal? Are you oblivious to the fact that his primary, what should have been his crown and glory, and I actually support him doing it, which was, you know, the Obamacare Act, was so badly constructed it is now costing people massive amounts of money more than what the old system was, and it is effectively financially imploding.
Well, it's just spun up.
That's not a successful... And the other thing, too, is you don't get a Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump election if you've had 8 years of, you know, what has been one of the best presidents in American history. I'm sorry, you just don't get that. Something's clearly not right for us to be in this situation.
Because the role of narratives plays a big part.
Yeah.
I mean, if I said McCarthyism, people would think, you know, witch hunts, you know, just completely irrational. Where when
Reeds under the bed.
Yeah, but you know, documents that come out afterwards, you know, from the KGB and other American intelligence things. It's not only was as bad as he thought it was with communist infiltration, it was far worse than he could even comprehend. But, you know, we only know these things in hindsight. But even if we had documentaries and everything out there, you'd have to have a mammoth educational push for people to get this idea about, you know, the truth of what actually happened. And you can't go back and fix all history like that.
Well, no, I think, too, it's people need to be taught, and this is where education is really failing, I think, is you people need to be taught not just how to think critically, but how to actually reason. And we talk a lot about critical thinking today. I'm not convinced a lot of that is actually being taught to students, but that really does rely on your ability to reason well and to have a basic grasp on, you know, the basic fundamentals of philosophical engagement around logic and other things. That's why, you know, a person who knows how to reason well can look at a particular meme or a particular article and they can begin to reason, you know, what is truthful or what is not or what doesn't seem correct, you know what I mean? But if you don't have that, then, yeah, oh boy, you really are in trouble, effectively. And I think in quite a big way, I think you really have to rely on often what is superficial. You have to rely on other people telling you what to think and what is accurate and what is not. You rely on popularity, I think, as a measure of truth. You know, well, it can't be true because, you know, most people think otherwise. It's just, yeah, and I think that's fundamentally, that's where a lot of the problems lie, I think, now, is just people's ability to even think through what they are accepting as fact or what ideological position they're following behind.
Because it can be quite a big thing to switch. I mean, I used to be on the left
yeah,
all those years ago, and just, you know, the whole how you have to see things in a new light. And even when people switch over, or shall we say convert, that they still can have other, you know, remnants of thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's the old saying about, you know, the old maxim that goes, if you're not a socialist in your 20s, you know, you've got no heart. If you're still a socialist by the time you're 40, you've got no brain. And that's probably the story of my life, to be fair. You know, when you're young and idealistic, you sort of want to believe, and you do believe that what the line that the progressive side of things is selling you. that we can make things better, that we can save the world. But when you get a bit older, and I think the other thing that helps as well is having family. When you've got your own kids, that changes everything. That's no slight on people who don't have kids, don't panic. But when you've had children and all of the responsibilities that entails, and there's no doubt your whole view of the world changes. Everything changes in a dramatic way. And you start to see even the human person differently. And you start to understand authority differently. And you start to understand a bit more about what's at stake and what really matters. And I think you start to see human nature a bit more realistically as well, or at least you can. And I think so. It's not surprising that a lot of people, when they're young, have that sort of almost delusional type aspirational thinking about governance. But
this is the whole Bernie Sanders thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the reason that the two things that stoke that in adults, older adults, that same sort of unthinking aspiration is, number one is desperation. When they're desperate, they'll tend to flock to anyone who seems to promise answers. And the other thing that I think stokes it is when you've got a culture of almost perpetual adolescence. And I think that is one of the big problems we do have in the West now is perpetual adolescence and people who effectively, they're quite happy because progressivism really doesn't just offer a bright new world. It really does offer to solve all your problems. And when you're a little kid, that's what you're looking for,
Yeah. If you're one of our younger listeners, you're like, no, I'm not going to change when I get old. All they have to say is,
just you wait. Don't worry. One day you'll realise that you're not looking for a government that can make all the monsters under the bed go away.
I'm not saying that this happened every time, but when people would say to me, "When you get older, you'll understand."
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, now I know.
What are you talking about, Willis? But it's true. It really is true, and you do. You get to a point, and I think I remember someone once saying to me that they had studied philosophy under a professor who suggested to them that you couldn't even really begin to do philosophy until you had turned about 40. And I always just think that was a bit odd, but now I kind of understand, I think, what they were getting at. And it's absolutely true. You do, as you get older, you do start to see things differently for a whole lot of reasons. The problem is, of course, as I said, we live in a culture now that has effectively enshrined and has created a perpetual adolescence for a lot of people, and that's problematic because your culture, your whole culture starts to get, or large sections of it anyway, start to get stuck in that sort of childhood state, which is not good for society.
And this whole perpetual adolescence, I mean, you look at the whole social justice warrior phenomena. I mean, it comes out of that. These are not emotionally mature people,
Yeah.
When you try to have intelligent dialogue with them, it's never intelligent. It's always, I feel, and, the whole Ben Shapiro thing, facts don't care about your feelings.
That's it, isn't it? There's a lot more, and this is the thing for me that's kind of very sad and very frustrating is that has now crept, the fields basically as a guide to discernment have now crept into Christianity in a big way. And I think, interestingly, that's a problem. And I think the reason why that has happened and why that happens a lot is because we don't really have to suffer for much in the West at the moment.
Oh, no, there's this bored decadence we have.
Yes, and you live in a sort of, you get luxury. There's a luxury in that. And it's when you, all of a sudden, when you have to suffer and when you have to really count the cost, you don't have time to sort of sit there and ponder your feelings. You have to begin to actually calculate concrete realities and what are, right and wrong and what you should and shouldn't be doing and what your obligations are. And it really does change, I think, your whole dynamic.
I mean, to do with government, it's with socialism and the government will do everything. It sort of takes away the feeling you've got a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Free stuff. It's not free. People have to. I mean, if Bernie Sanders somehow won and brought in free college, you'd have all these middle-aged, poor black, Latino, or white, whatever people paying for young people's college,
Yeah.
and just being tax burdened, and I mean this is the part of on the right and small government. Small government doesn't get in the way as much. It allows for more freedom, where large government just becomes constraining. It becomes its own end.
Yeah. And it starts to, the overreaches, it becomes inevitable. It starts to believe that, because this is where you start to see things like a religious freedom start to erode, because the government starts to think that it can create this brave new world, and it doesn't. One thing the government doesn't do is, it's not a scalpel, as the old saying goes. It's a broadsword. It's probably not even that. It's a sledgehammer, really. And it deals with big sort of concrete things, but it can't do minute. It can't do the minutiae of day-to-day life. And so when it comes up against something like freedom of conscience, which is a profoundly important right, it wants to try and stamp it out, and it wants to try and force it all into a very tight, neat and small and tidy little box. But that's not how that issue works. But the state can't work with the messy edges and the greyness of certain things. It has to have finite, solid, like I said, it's a sledgehammer. And the problem is that you end up with oppression as a result, and the building of this brave new world and this new system where the state becomes all powerful. The more it progresses, the worse and worse that sort of stuff just becomes.
And having studied a lot of philosophy, there's a big thing of philosophy is meant to be the search for truth. The mind in union with reality. And this is the big problem with ideology. If it doesn't, ideology over reality, we're going to do this, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And you get system, the government can become, what's the word? Necessity. The San Bernardino shooting. Somebody who declared allegiance to ISIS shot up a gay club. I hope people haven't forgotten this already. And the left chose the Muslims over the gay community.
Yeah.
Now, a big part of that is a certain level of practicality. Both of them traditionally vote left, but one breeds like rabbits and the other doesn't breed at all.
Yeah.
So they're just going to go, no, we're going to, there's no way these people will be providing all these future voters. There's no way we're going to choose against them. Yeah.
Oh, and I think there's also particularly with that progressivism, there is a delusional idealism. There's an unwillingness often to look at the real facts on the ground. Instead, they want to believe what they think is possible. You talked about it before, that they don't really acknowledge the truth of man's condition, and so they want to believe the best. They don't. I imagine progressives would make very, very easy victims of computer scammers from Nigeria, because they want to, and that's not a bad thing. You need people in your society who have that sort of almost all-encompassing and almost delusional level of hope and belief and goodness and everything else. But you don't really want too many of them in government, I don't think, because and just like you don't want too many people in government who are hard-headed and cynical. The problem is progressivism tends to go, I think, to shift away from, and that's where it starts to shift away from reality, as it moves more towards effectively a belief that they can build this new human being, or that human being exists. You've just got to somehow enlighten it.
I agree with you that they do look for the best in people, in the human condition, but at the same time, they're quite quick to demonize other people. And as we are going back to the Satanism, a lot of these reformist or revolutionary beliefs are intrinsically antisocial, and you see the social justice warriors engaged in the most antisocial behavior not just throwing fits like children, but they can get violent. They'll yell in the faces of people.
But you know why that happens? That happens because you have got the basic sort of principles of Christian virtue, but they have been completely divorced from the framework of truth, of objective truth and objective reality. They have been completely divorced from the very framework which gives rise to those things. So they want virtue, but they want a subjective and a relativistic form of virtue. And they want the good things, but they don't want the surrender of self, the self-giving that is required to get, and the suffering that is necessary to actually, through self-sacrifice, that is necessary to achieve what they really want.
There's also, going back a little bit, I saw a thing somebody did. He went to university and asked white liberals about voter ID laws and if they're racist. And, all these, liberal white students, like, oh, yeah, and why are they racist? And they would say, they're really poor and they might have poor, not the skills to go down, and they don't know where it is. They can't look it up. They might have smartphones, but they have data. The next bit is the guy going into, Harlem. This is in New York. And, just talking to black voters is like, do you have the internet? Do you have it? And it's like, well, these guys are saying that about you. And like, who are they talking to?
That's the thing, mate. That's why I always laugh at the whole celebrity endorsement of progressive politicians. It's going on big time with Hillary Clinton now. This is the same demographic that effectively keeps Scientology alive and well, right? and yet we're now being expected to take their thoughts on politics and voting seriously. It's just, it is. That's where things just often are so out of touch and so inconsistent. And that's what I mean about that whole self-giving and self-sacrifice that's required. To achieve a virtuous society, you have to be virtuous yourself, and that's hard. That's why you've got all these people who are attacking Trump. I just saw a new video from a group of B-list celebrities they've made a sort of parody song, but it's clearly anti-Trump. Doesn't hide its colours, and in which they have effectively extolled the dangers of electing Trump and how a vote for Clinton is a vote for a brighter society.
Wait, is this Joss
Whedon? But all through the song, they've referred to Trump as human syphilis, an orange STD, a sentient septic tank. That's not a virtuous society. And if you don't live that yourself, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They want the virtuous society. They think Trump's a danger to it, but they're not really willing to actually live that virtuous society themselves.
Oh, well, it's like when they had the Ann Coulter comedy roast, and they were calling her a cunt. If somebody from the right was calling somebody left a cunt, it's like, oh, abuse of women, blah, blah, blah. But it's perfectly sensible because Ann Coulter's on the right. Body shaming is bad. Oh, Donald Trump calling, Rosie O'Donnell, fat, etc. is bad. But, those Trump statues they had naked and huge belly and that, that's fine. Anna Kasparian, Young Turks, Alex Jones, you fat fuck, and
that's what I'm saying. It's like there is no. I look at that and I say that's why I think there is no future for that particular ideology, because people, I think most people look at that and do. More and more people, once they begin to wake up out of the sort of superficial slumber that we often get stuck in a very consumerist and decadent society, you pretty quickly realize that what these people are living is not what we want. And if they're not living themselves something that you want, why would you actually listen when they claim to have the answers,
Yeah, and that goes back to my earlier point. If you have a philosophy you can't live out, then it's terrible. It's going to lead you to disaster. You've got to conform to reality.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? That's the difficulty of the human experience is surrender and humility, and whether it be humility of the intellect, humility around spirituality, humility around your personal interaction with others and all the rest of it. It's far easier to be egomaniacal, and I'll tell you what's really amplified that, I think, is social media. It is a tool, effectively, when it is misused and not used well, it allows us to become egomaniacal and narcissist beyond our sort of wildest dreams,
Oh, yeah, my dealings with some millennials. Yeah, I know, not all millennials, but most of them, the bastards. It's just like, oh, when you get older, hopefully you know, but right now you should know already. But
oh, well, that's the thing, isn't it? One day, we'll be old men sitting on our porch with our squirrel guns saying, told you so.
So, Brendan, you're saying one of the futures of a hope for, humility and, et cetera, is Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'd quite say that. I think, like I said, he's more like a Charlemagne character. You wouldn't want to double cross him or have him around for dinner for some polite conversation. But then when your empire is in absolute strife, he's the guy that you want to call up to the plate.
I mean, this is just idle gossip, I suppose. But well, I don't know. But if Trump gets in, who do you think will be the real first lady, Melania or Ivanka?
Wow, it's funny, isn't it? It's we've never seen, I don't think, ever an American president who, in some ways, would be so detached from the system. So it's hard to know how that would all play out. Barack Obama was definitely, he was a great, there's no doubting the fact that he could read a teleprompter and really he could bring passion to speech giving like no one else could. And he certainly was a guy who could entertain. He was great on those late night talk shows, and he had that whole entertainment shtick down really, really well. But he was still very much establishment, whereas Trump he's not like that. And so I don't know how some of those sort of formalities are all going to play out, No doubt if he does win, the progressive media will have a field day mocking him every time, he doesn't get something that the establishment says you should get right, absolutely, perfectly right. But, there's some big questions there, isn't there?
Yes, it's... We're on a cusp of a new chapter or the same chapter going on for bookloads.
Well, either way, I think it's new. I think the world will see if Clinton wins it, and that's quite possible. The world will see an America whereby I just think you can't put that genie back in the bottle now, and I think there's just no way. Either way, one good thing is it will be the end of the Clinton political dynasty, which I think is a good thing. It's got to happen. It's just, the other thing I think we've got to get rid of is there's just the Kennedy dynasty, the Bush dynasty, the Clinton dynasty. That effectively they're turning America into some sort of weird monarchical type republic where you have ruling families, and I think that's been a big problem for them.
But one of the things is also there could possibly be a Trump dynasty.
Yeah, possibly, which wouldn't be good either, I don't think, because we're repeating that same mistake.
Well, it depends. I suppose there's a role for merit, but also, you don't. It's easy to become cynical or, it's interesting.
We'll all know on Wednesday, I suppose, or Tuesday American time.
Well, this is the thing, it's like the election will be over by then.
Yeah.
No, a whole new, I mean, either side that loses will be continuously gearing for war, waging war, because
well, you watch. This would be almost worth having Trump win just for the experimental factor. If Trump wins, I'm willing to bet that the Clinton supporters will just suddenly discover their inner conspiracy theorist, and they will be screaming about how this thing is rigged.
Well, they had this. I mean, when before with the polls, which are basically rigged. Trump was going, the whole thing's rigged, and they're going, no. And now Hillary's not doing well. The Russians are hacking into the machines, and
The Russians are back. You can't beat some good old McCarthyism.
Although
the Russians are back.
It is kind of funny, but they just had that drill which involved 40 million Russian citizens, in case there was a nuclear war or any other major natural disaster, which is a little alarming. But yeah, it's.
I don't know. To me, I think that the Russian Putin's once again, he's no saint, but I think that certainly the Western media has a very again, we get a very jaundiced view of Russia, and they're a convenient sort of, they're a convenient enemy if you like to trot out and so.
Well, there's something in the Russian character, and it's it's sort of like the same with the Germans and that. They've had their nation basically flattened a number of times, and they've resurged. A whole lot of other nations, they were basically conquered, and that was the end of their great period. Like nobody thinks how great Spain is, or Poland is, even at one stage they were great powers. But always Germany and Russia always rise from the ashes.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But
maybe we might get our first Russian president.
Well, it would be if one thing I'd really want to see out of a Trump victory is him and Putin shaking hands. Yep,
that would be good. And I my hope is this, that I want him to be magnanimous if he wins. My hope is that what he does is he just extends the olive branch and really, I think, completely destroys the narrative in one foul swoop by basically showing that he's not this tyrannical nut job that the media have conveniently sort of painted him to be.
And if Hillary gets in, I hope conservatives find a spine.
Yeah, wow.
Or the alt-right becomes more respectable or something.
Well, or they lock up the silverware in the White House. I don't know. Is that a bit crass to say that it might get sold off again?
Did you know that when they got out of the White House, they had this whole thing, they took stuff with them. Apparently the same thing with the State Department when she left.
There's furniture or something I hear that went missing.
Yeah. It's... But I think to help wrap this off, dear listener, just look into doomsday prepping. Just take a casual look. Yeah,
or at least make sure that your money's in a mattress and not in a bank where Hillary can access it. I don't know. Seriously, I don't know. I think you just got to carry on. Just like we don't want to be our own version of the progressives who think that you can build a better world with a government. The danger is people start thinking that you elect the perfect president. So even though a terrible one gets elected, it's not the end of the world. Just you soldier on.
I mean, just let's have an experiment. Let's just cut it down. Cut the size of government down everywhere. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll probably wrap it up there. Thank you very much again, Brendan. Look him
enjoyable.
Up on Facebook, Left Foot Media.
Yep, and watchlfm.com. That's Watch Left Foot Media, so watchlfm.com for my YouTube channel. And
until next time, if the world hasn't ended, or, it might end if Trump gets in and there's this huge party. It might be the most epic party ever, blows it up. Just look after yourself, and there will be a tomorrow, and which will bring its own challenges and benefits, and just keep positive. Exactly. Okay. See you all. See you, everyone.